Well, let's see if these questions are for you this week, Jim. The first batch of 2020 or 2020, however we want to put it. This first question was
now, now that is going to be a source of fucking issue here because 2020 is going to call everybody's attention to the fucking news magazine program on ABC or your potentially perfect eyesight. 2020 is going to have to be what we call it until it gets to 2021 because there's never been 2021 eyesight or a news magazine titled 2021, but we're going to have to do 2020.
All right, you Downs, let's see how you deal with this first question.
And thank you, Baba Wawa.
This was sent in. This is 2020. This was sent in to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com. I'm guessing this may not be a real name. Jack Mayoff in Balzac, Virginia.
Balzac, Virginia. I've been there before. I think we ran the high school.
Several people have sent in this question. What are your thoughts on the Lana Lashley wedding segment? Do you think these comedy segments should be given so much attention on the primary wrestling show on television?
Well, this has happened since we've had the break, right? I guess because you don't, you would have already imagined I didn't see this, and you're correct. I didn't see it because I didn't know it. One of our homework over the holidays was watching Raw, but I heard everybody hated it and it stunk. But I don't. What exactly did they do? I don't even know.
I didn't watch the whole thing, and I haven't kept up with the whole Lana Lashley Rusev angle because it was
so now that we've both established our preeminent knowledge on this subject, we're going to go ahead and comment on it.
One of the main reasons I wanted to dissuade you from doing Raw reviews was I didn't want to have anything to do with this crap that they're putting out there on TV. But during the wedding segment, I did see part of that. And I guess what happened was, of course, in traditional wrestling fashion, right before the vows, something crazy has to happen. Liv Morgan, who they had been doing these vignette videos for that they were repackaging, she walks out and says how the whole thing is bullshit, and everyone thinks she's talking about the fact that Lashley is getting married because they're thinking maybe she's saying that she was having a thing with Lashley, and in fact it's the opposite. Paul Heyman style swerve, she's been having an affair with Lana, and she can't believe that Lana is going to marry Lashley, and then she gets in the ring and she starts fighting Lana, and then Rusev jumps out of a cake. The opposite usually.
So wait a minute, the guy didn't get the cake in the face. He came out of the cake.
He came out of the cake. He came out of the cake, and then they.
Well, anybody that comes out of a cake gets over. We know this much.
Well, I don't know. They may have tested that theory on the show this week, but I think the whole thing is such a waste of Rusev. He's such a talent. I think Lana, when used correctly, is a real talent. Lashley, I can go either way on, but this is exactly the kind of thing that makes me not want to pay any attention to modern wrestling, is crap like this.
Well, and here's another. It's completely unfucking believable. Liv Tyler comes out, or is
Liv
that
Morgan?
Okay, Liv Tyler is the very attractive daughter of Steven Tyler. Liv Morgan comes out and tells Lana they've been having an affair and springs this on Lashley. Like anybody's going to believe that anybody could possibly have an affair in the wrestling business and anybody not know about it. That's ridiculous. That's completely unbelievable. It exposes the business that anybody would be fucking around and everybody in the wrestling business not know about it.
What was the first big affair that you remember going around the locker room, everyone talking about?
Oh God.
So, I mean, there weren't a lot of women used as valets or on the roster until you got to World Class, I guess, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, they were always part of a couple. Miss Linda and Adrian. But I guess probably the Chris Adams, Billy Jack, Miss Jeannie. I forgot all the twists and turns in that saga, but that may have been the first one. And that's right. You know, as we had I just got into business and we were just headed toward Louisiana when they were doing that in Texas and blah, blah, blah. That may have been the end. But there's been more drama in that direction over the last 20 years than ever before. And it used to be discouraged for guys to even bring their wives or girlfriends to the matches for several reasons. Number one, because then you had to keep constant eye on them because the people would fuck with them, whether, got physically or just yelling at them or throwing shit at them or on them or whatever. That legitimately happened. If the fans knew that somebody came in with the heels and those people were out in the crowd or in the women's bathroom or whatever the fuck, they were fair game. But secondly, you didn't want the wives and girlfriends on the road or at the matches to meet all the other wives and girlfriends, in quotation marks, that were on the road and at the matches. And so you try to, Precious was considered one of the boys because she was with Gorgeous Jimmy, but she knew what was going on and she did not. She was in the same social circle as the boys, not as the wives and girlfriends. If you brought your wife and girlfriend as part of the gimmick, part of your gimmick, you brought them into the world of the boys and that social circle, and they pretty much knew that if they spilled beans to the wives and girlfriends social circle, that their husband would probably be fucking dropped on his head somewhere in the fucking locker room. So it was a different, but then every once in a while, and you'd have Tatum and then Eddie with Missy. And you would have some of these things flare up every once in a while, but it was highly discouraged to, and now I guess they want the men and women on the roster to date each other. I've heard, because apparently so many of them do and get married, etc. They are encouraging that, whereas before it was always if you had a girl in a territory and she was not with a dedicated husband, but just kind of floating around, it was going to be trouble sooner or later.
I recently had a discussion with Howard Baum while we're recording the 605 Super Podcast. It was an off-air talk, and I'm going to speak in some vagueness here, but you'll know exactly what I'm talking about.
Vagosity.
He was mentioning how there's a book that came out in the last few years, and the opening chapter was this salacious story of Christine Jarrett finding two wrestlers in a van with some women when they were supposed to be in the ring. And how it's a great story. And he brought it up to one of the fabulous wrestlers who potentially was involved here. And the guy smiled a little bit, but then just said, no, I love my wife. I was with my wife. My wife.
Who was standing next to him apparently at the time, probably. Yes, because one of those relationships was a very long-term one. Yes. And another one of those was persons in that fabulous tag team was just free as the bird for all those years. And now I'm not talking about Hayes and Gordy either. He was unattached and single, and probably I'm sure some of his reputation meandered off on the other guy.
Was Sam Houston and Baby Doll always out in the open, or was there a period of time where they weren't? Were they too open? I guess maybe.
I don't think it had been going on a real long time before, it was obvious. But once again, they were baby faces, and we didn't travel in the same social circles, obviously, because of that. And we never rode together because of that. And we're not in a lot of the same locker rooms because of that. But the way I knew it became an issue suddenly was on Crockett's plane, when it was obvious that something was going on other than, people just riding to the fucking show, which is what got them all the heat to begin with. But that was a situation where basically Sam Houston got penalized because he was an underneath guy at the time and she was being used on top. So he got penalized just, because of that situation, because he was a real good worker. He was just painfully thin, but holy shit, if he hadn't had his other issues, he would have probably filled out and gotten bigger and still been a tremendous worker. But in this case, it's because he was lucky to kind of be on the plane to begin with. And now all of a sudden they're putting on what do the kids call it? The PDA on the plane while we're all trying to fucking, watch the volunteer jam video for the fucking 11,000th time and ignore them. So they kicked Houston off the plane.
Dark Journey got involved in the business as Dick Slater's girlfriend, and then after Slater left the UWF, she stayed, and then eventually she got absorbed.
There was a lot of female trouble in the Mid-South area between 1985 and 1988, wasn't there?
There certainly was, and then she got absorbed in the Crockett Promotions, and then she was gone pretty quickly. Was she actually seeing anyone or fooling around with anyone in Crockett? Or I mean, it was just such a weird thing that she ended up there because she did nothing else in wrestling after that. She only got involved as the girlfriend of a wrestler and then hung around that territory for a while. Any story to why she was in Crockett or what she was doing there?
No, I saw Dark Journey in Charlotte at the Fan Fest this past year, and I'd seen her once before in New Orleans a few years ago. So a couple of times in the last 30 years. So I'm not. I appreciate your respect for my knowledge of wrestling history, but I'm not sure I can qualify on a expert rundown of Dark Journey's career. But I think probably it was a mutual thing. A reason why she got out of the business. It just they had absorbed the UWF and they'd taken her on. She had been on TV for a couple years, had a name. I don't know at that point how dedicated she really was to continuing in the wrestling business. And I think probably when they decided to stop using her, which happens and happened with a lot of the UWF talent, male or female, she could have got booked in a variety of other places, maybe not as high profile, but if she wanted to stay in the business come hell or high water at that point, she could have got booked in a number of places. And I think she went on to do something else. But yes, originally she was Slater's girlfriend, and then as far as whether she was messing around with anybody or not, I don't know. As Dennis Connery used to say, it wasn't my week to watch them, right? I didn't see the dick in the pussy, as he would say, Bill Cosby-ish like. The dick in the pussy. So I have no idea about that. But I think that the most famous story about Sting taking the brunt of Slater's displeasure over him giving her a ride after she and Slater broke up that's the thing. Sting was just giving her a fucking ride. I don't think there was anything going on, and he ended up getting his head stuck in the fucking toilet by Slater for it. I think he was just trying to be a nice guy. I don't know. I have no idea.
Back to the initial question about the wedding. I guess the first really prominent ones in wrestling were the Butcher of Vashon one on TNT and the Uncle Elmer one on Saturday night's main event. Are there any weddings in wrestling that you've actually liked? Do you like it at all being used on a wrestling show?
Well, I mean, they did them in the 40s and 50s. I mean, there's evidence going back that far. So and so will get married in the ring after the match. It was before television. It's been done as an attraction, and they didn't become giant angles and the big fucking hoo-ha. That didn't happen until the modern era with Jerry Springer and all that bullshit. It's so clownish. It's just always so clownish. And it brings out the worst in the boys and the writers that all want to do some kind of goddamn Monty Python movie that will be glorified as fucking brilliant satire and comedy forevermore. So it's just so fucking goofy. If you really actually did it, and did a straight wedding and with no angle, but just to establish the wife as somebody that we halfway give a shit about, and then used her 3 months down the road, gave her a fucking pile driver and paralyzed her when she was pregnant or whatever, to really get some fucking heat. I'd love that. But it just always degenerates into fucking cake throwing and play fighting.
And you would be certainly against cake throwing.
Yes, these cakes can be dangerous. I got juice for the fucking Louisiana cake. I told you that, right?
I remember seeing it. I don't remember you telling me the story.
Well, I didn't realize then I'd only done the cake the once, and it just happened to be that I was able to get a store-bought ready-made cake, right? Of the kind that I wanted, because I wasn't going to go goddamn order of, of custom made. I just went and got a big birthday cake, right? Well, when I went to get the big birthday cake in Louisiana, the only one they had was the giant sheet cake. Well, that looks good. People will be able to see it, and I can just write the shit on it, whatever the fuck. But I didn't realize until I was headed toward it, that fucking sheet cake wasn't that thick. And there was a table underneath. So I actually did get a bloody nose, but you couldn't tell because of all the different colored icing. But in the Mid-South Wrestling cake with the Rock and Roll Express, they took me all the way to the table. I came out with a bloody nose out of that.
Did you buy every other cake that you were pushed into?
Yes. And all no, well, the one we did in Atlanta at the studio, I obviously didn't bring that down on the plane with me. I'm going to say that I'd made arrangements maybe with somebody like, Charlie McGowan or somebody or whatever to have a cake. But no, it was a point where I almost fucking hyperventilated the night before the Mid-South angle, blowing up all those party balloons. Back in those days, whether it was Memphis TV or Mid-South or even Crockett, Atlanta TV, whatever, if you did something like that required props, it's either because the booker told you, hey, we're going to have a party for a fucking dog, or a party because you won the U.S. tag title or whatever this weekend on TV, so bring some shit. Or you had the idea to do something that would require some props, and you went out and you brought them yourself. There was not a goddamn time we ever got supplied with any fucking thing in any deal I ever did, except, like I said, if it was something where we were flying in and I had to make arrangements to get a cake or whatever. But no, all that shit was what we came up with based on what we were told we were going to do. I started that in Memphis. We're going to have a fucking party. We're going to have balloons. We're going to have confetti, noisemakers. Whatever the fuck. It's my goddamn segment. I want it to get over. We're going to do this thing right.
I remember Eddie Gilbert talking about when they did the angle in Mid-South where he had the portrait made and eventually it was stolen by the Bruise Brothers and then they broke it over his head.
Yeah.
But he actually had to go out and get it made. Like, it wasn't like supplied to him. He had to go out and get the photo. He had to go out and get it professionally done. He was responsible for every part of that angle.
Yeah, that's why I love to go to Spencer's Gifts and gimmick shops to get little props and stupid things that I could fucking make fun of people with or whatever. But in some cases, with a bigger presentation like that, you spent a little bit of money to get the fucking point, or bought a suit to have it ripped off, or fucking, buy a trophy to have it broken, or whatever. That's what you did to get your shit over.